I think Ken is making his way down as we speak. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little background on Ken. Our next guest has appeared in almost 200 films and television programs as both a stuntman and an actor. He has one of those faces that looks instantly familiar because you've seen it in such films as Legends of the Fall, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, Wrong Turn 2, Dead End, and the television series The X-Files, Supernatural, and Smallville. But his greatest role, it's kind of ironic, because his greatest role is one in which his face was hidden. And it was hidden behind a very famous hockey mask. Now, we've been lucky because Jim's touched on it a little bit. We've had a number of actors here at Sinister Creature Con that have worn the mask, but none more skillfully than the star of the horror classic Freddy vs. Jason, and that's Ken Kirzinger. Ken? Jason fans from way back. This is Father's Day, and Jim always honors me because I was his 5th grade teacher.
Oh.
So we're doing this in tandem, and not only is it a treat to have you here, but it's a treat to be able to be working with my former students.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
That's great.
And I'm so proud of him. He does such a fantastic job here.
That's great. You guys have stayed in touch all these years.
Yeah, we've
been
stayed
such a
in
good
touch.
friend.
Yeah. Sure. And now we actually are friends. When I think about us being student and teacher, it seems real as us being friends.
But you come to us for Sinister Creature Con. You having a good weekend?
I am. I'm loving the weather. Vancouver is very rainy still, so the sunshine's been a great boost. And no, it's been fantastic.
Right on.
Yeah.
You know, Freddy vs. Jason, this film, every horror fan, I think, loses their mind at the end of Jason Goes to Hell. You have the iconic shot of the mask, and it's not just any hand that reaches up, it's Freddy's clawed hand. And we hear the iconic, Robert laugh, and it's like, holy shit, they're doing it, it's gonna happen. So, I know, before the movie, obviously, you had acting work experience, and you had stuntman work experience. How did you come into getting the offer to play Jason to go head-to-head with Freddy?
Well, it goes all the way back to actually number 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. I had worked on that as the stunt coordinator and the stunt double and playing the fry cook in the movie. So when they came to Vancouver to do, which incidentally, the first phone call I got for number 8 was from Randy Sheldon, who's the production manager on the show, and I get this message on my answering machine, which tells you how long ago it was. But hey Ken, would you like to be the stunt coordinator on this Friday the 13th movie and play Jason?
Nice.
And to be honest, I didn't know what a big deal it was or anything like that, and I hadn't even called him back yet. And then the next message I got was, well, the guy that played him in the last movie is going to play him again, and of course that was Kane, and it didn't mean really much to me. Oh, okay, yeah, well, I'll take the coordinating job.
Right.
Flash forward to Freddy vs. Jason, and I'm being interviewed by the line producer who was up in Vancouver, and I'm talking to him. He goes, "Yeah, you asked me about working on number 8," and he goes, "So you wore the Jason costume, you did all that?" And I, yeah. And he goes, "We've been looking for somebody your size. Would you be interested in auditioning?" And the audition was, they read the opening scene, they did a close-up of my eyes, and I had this cheap white Jason mask on. And so they did that, and I guess then they showed that to Ronny Yu, and I had I think a quick meeting with Ronny Yu, and I got the job. So that's how I became Jason in Freddy versus Jason.
You're actually the tallest actor that's ever played Jason. Am I correct about that?
I believe so, yeah.
And you mentioned that you worked with Kane Hodder in Friday the 13th, Part 8.
Yeah.
You actually, did you double him?
Yes.
For some scenes? So you're actually like the only other person that's worn the hockey mask twice, as I understand it. Or more than once.
Well, yeah, I mean, I doubled Kane for, there's the subway scene and walking on the subway and then he falls on the electric tracks and then he got hit by the car, that was me, and then the scene where his face melts in the subway, that was me as well, and it's funny because Kane came to me after the movie and he goes, "Don't tell anybody you doubled me, okay?" I said, all right, I didn't tell, so I didn't say anything about it for years and years, but nobody knew.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you ever see Kane and I together,
There's a difference.
there's a difference, yeah.
Yeah.
And but nobody ever knew
Yeah.
until Freddy versus Jason came out. And, people found out that I doubled him on that. So
Was Kane ever, I know he was disappointed because he didn't get the role in Freddy versus Jason. Was that, and you had been, friendly with Kane during the making of Friday the 13th, Part 8. Was there ever a time when you sat down and talked to him about it, or when he?
It's funny. He was pissed at me. Somehow he thought I stole the role from him or something, and so when I got Jason and Freddy versus Jason, he wouldn't really even talk to me much. So he was angry about that, and I guess he needed somebody to blame. But it had nothing to do with me. As a matter of fact, the first words out of my mouth when they asked me about playing Jason and Freddy versus Jason is, well, like, what about Kane? And because I just assumed he was coming back up to Vancouver, and we'd had a good working relationship on number 8. And actually, I didn't ask for it, but Kane gave me a signed autographed picture at the end of the movie and said, "Thanks for making me look so good." That was unfortunate. But
you must see him occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
Shows
No,
and stuff
no.
like that. Is that still an issue with
No,
you guys?
you know what? Years later, it took a few years for him to kind of get over it, I think. And I don't know if he ever really got over it, but he pulled me aside one day and he goes, all that stuff. He goes, "It's over. It's over." I go, "Good man, because you're an icon, so you shouldn't have to worry about that."
Of course.
And so I think he's put it in his rearview mirror now.
Yeah, and I had read somewhere that was actually a producer's decision anyway, right? It wasn't the director; it was the producer that said, "We want to go this way."
I think Ronny Yu had a lot to do with it, but you hear different stories from different people. All I can say is that Doug, the line producer, I can't remember his last name, said that they wanted somebody a different size, and Ronny Yu had seen a comic book that I think was made in Japan about Freddy versus Jason, or Freddy or Jason. I'm not sure if it was Freddy and Jason, but in that version, apparently the Jason looked a lot more like my Jason, and so I'm sure that they all had input at a certain level, and what the real story is, we may never know.
Yeah. Sure.
You getting the role immediately, like this, the marketing for the film was like off the wall awesome for a horror fan.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching Buffer do like a tale of the tape introduction in Vegas of Freddy and Jason. First of all, I was kind of assuming it wasn't you in the suit that day.
It was.
It wasn't. It was. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So was that actually Robert in the Freddy suit?
Sure, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, if you watch it, it's on YouTube. If you watch it, you can. Robert speaks, of course, and everything. And
Oh, I've only ever seen the clip of you guys actually squaring off. So you guys did like a whole press conference type
Oh
thing.
my God, yeah, it was
Oh,
a
wow.
big deal.
Okay.
They promoted it just as if it was a real fight,
Yeah.
and introduced us like fighters would be introduced in a fighter. That's why they got Michael Buffer, and no, it was a big deal. And Robert and I were so blown away by it.
Oh yeah, I gotta
And-
watch this extended clip then because that's pretty rad.
Yeah, well, I never knew how big what a big deal it was, really, until towards the end of the filming. I started hearing from friends and family go, "Have you gone on the internet and seen what a big deal this is and stuff?" And then Robert and I were doing a press radio show in San Diego, because we had gone to San Diego Comic-Con to promote it. And I came out, and I think there was like 10 or 15 people waiting for us to come out of the radio station. And you know, we're walking in the limo, and these people are behind the chain link fence. They're yelling and screaming and stuff like that. And I turned to Robert and I go, wouldn't this be cool if this was like #1, you know, in the box office, you know, for a weekend or something like that? And we both sort of nodded our heads and stuff. And lo and behold, it came out, and it was like #1 for 2 weekends in a row, which is
great
pretty,
for a horror film.
pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just took the words out of my mouth. The fact that you can point to that a horror film, you know, no matter, it's not even only if it's unfairly, it's always seems like it's unfairly where the Rotten Tomatoes, it's like you can cut the thing in half, and if it's a true horror film, and it hits 5, it's 10 for everything else because of the unfair reviews it's going to get just for being a horror film.
Right.
The fact that you guys sat at #1, not just for opening weekend, but for the rollover weekend, is like monumental, especially for when it came out.
I mean, that's all word of mouth, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people going and seeing it, and after, I think it was a decade of anticipation of Freddy versus Jason, they finally got it out, and people were so ready for it. And the thing is, they'd spent, you know, there are several versions of the script, and I thought the one they finally settled on, I mean, you're never gonna make everybody happy all the time, but I think it really satisfied a lot of the people. And it was the type of movie you could watch, and they gave you enough background so that if you weren't up on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, you could still watch it and sort of figure it out.
Sure.
But there's enough, you know, tidbits in there for the real fans to really enjoy it as well.
Yeah, the backstory just in the opening scene of why he's resurrecting you is really like the perfect setup. Regardless if you're coming in fresh, you had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
Like that alone gives you enough story as to why you're pissing them off when you start killing the kids.
Yes.
You had to have some dental work done during the
Yeah.
shooting.
Famous story.
Yeah.
So I had some. I have a bridge in the front here, and I had a tooth knocked out. Stuntman. Anyway, so they have the fake teeth. The only scene in the movie where you see even just part of Jason's face is in the van when they Kelly Rowland lifts up the mask and gurgles out the water and stuff like that. So the only day I actually had full facial prosthetics, which included some false teeth, and they usually put Vaseline on so it comes off easier. Anyway, so they put the teeth in, and then they pull them out, and they pulled out my bridge. And so they're like, oh my God, we're so sorry, you know, we'll get you to a dentist right away kind of thing, but I'm in full makeup. And so I got this old brown, and I'm in partial costume. They gave me a hoodie to wear. So I wear the hoodie to the dentist's office, and I walk in there, there's a woman, and she's reading a magazine or a newspaper or something like that. And she doesn't look up and see me, she just hears me talking to the person at the front counter. And so I sit down across from her, and finally she, you know, lowers the paper, she looks up, and she goes, the paper goes up again, and it starts shaking a bit, and I'm going, sorry, this is just prosthetic makeup, I'm working on a movie, and blah, blah, blah. She goes, oh, thank God, I thought they had found you in a sewer or something. Yeah, so that's that story.
That's great.
Yeah.
When you guys finally do, you know, square up, because you get to replicate some pretty rad Freddy kills, like stabbing her through the mattress and the fold on the boyfriend, the cornfield scene,
Yeah.
where you invade the grave, and you know it all starts with the Everclear.
Yeah.
So you have some pretty dope, like solo, just massacre scenes as Jason that you got to do, but then we move into, you know, the third act, which actually delivers. It's not a pay-per-view fight, which ends in the first round. We get like close to 30 minutes of solid Freddy versus Jason action taking place, you know, both in the real world of the site of the camp. You know, I think of it kind of as a quarry once, you know, you guys go into where the CO2 cartridges are.
Right.
and the cabin / dockside, and then of course Freddy's boiler room.
Mm-hmm.
What was one of your favorite, especially with the background with stunts? Like, what was your favorite, kind of sequence in the actual fight between the two of you?
Well, I really love the shot of when Jason picks him up and stuffs him through the windows
Yes.
and then runs them down.
Yeah.
So that was great. But I mean, the whole fight scene at the end was, I think, my favorite because it was what everybody was waiting for, and they had made it such a great fight. Because initially, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Freddy's so much smaller than Jason. How's he gonna beat Jason?" And Ronny Yu is from Hong Kong, and he was into martial arts, and it's not always the big guy that wins. A small, fast guy can take on a big, slow guy, and they really thought that out well, and thought out the fight scene really, really well. And I wish I could remember the name of the fight choreographer, but they just did a really good job of that whole sequence, and it was what everybody was waiting for. So that was my favorite.
I think in the fight, it comes the closest to ever hearing Jason actually kind of speak. Like, you hear your grunts when he makes contact, like, very clearly.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of the other Fridays, if Jason is getting blows landed on him, he doesn't necessarily emote that externally.
Yeah.
So what was that process of were you talking with Ronnie how should I grunt or
No, I think Ronnie wanted this Jason to move differently and be as unique as you could make the character without stepping too far away from what the expectations of the fans are and stuff. So that was probably something we never discussed, actually, the sounds and stuff, but they obviously decided to leave that in because they felt that it added to the character and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the Jason and Freddy versus Jason, I mean, he's not like the other Jasons you've seen. They take him to emotional levels that, and a lot of people criticize Jason's not afraid of water, and of course Jason isn't too, but younger Jason, that's what Freddy was tapping into in his dream world. So that's my rationalization for it.
Sure.
People will still not agree, I'm sure, but that's what they were going for.
I've read that Ronny Yu, this is kind of a two-part question, because I've read that Ronny Yu wanted to limit your stunts in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well, it wasn't Ronny Yu. So finish your question.
Oh, okay. Well, somebody wanted to limit your stunts in the movie. But the other part of the question is that your background as a stuntman actually saved you from getting seriously injured, because was there one incident or two incidents in the movie where you actually caught on fire and it wasn't?
Yeah, there was one instance where I accidentally caught on fire. So what happened is when I went and had my interview with the line producer, I of course had read the script and I knew all the stunts in the movie and everything when we were talking about it. When I got the job, I went to the line producer. I said, "Listen, there's this one stunt that I really want to do," and it was the fire gag in the cornfield. Now it was because it was the biggest budget version. We had a main unit and a second unit, and on second unit is where they shoot stunts where they don't need the lead actors or the inserts of hands doing stuff. And so I said, well, "Listen, I really want to do the fire gag in the cornfield." And I, of course, had fire experience and stuff like that, and I knew it would get nominated for a World Stuntman's Award, and I really wanted to do that. And he said, "Nope, we hired you as an actor on this, Ken. We're going to have a stunt double for you," and I'm like, well, okay, I don't get a choice, But the funny part about that was the last night of filming. The stunt double, Glenn Ennis, he was in the right costume for, I think, the hand coming out of the ground, and I was in the right costume for the scene where Jason flies out of the back of the van and when the van flips. So they came to me and they said, "Ken, you're in the right costume for the van flip," would you do it? Would you do the ratchet out of the back of the van? I go, oh, okay, now, last night of film, I'm expendable. so I did the ratchet out of the van and blended the hand out of the grave. But, yeah, I did. I really wanted to do that fire sequence. It was really well done. It was actually a combination of multiple burns. I think it was 8 full
Oh my
burns.
gosh.
So great sequence.
Yeah, amazing. I read this also, that the most difficult scene that you described was the one where you're coming out of the lake.
Actually, no, it was the scene where I was sinking down
Oh,
into the,
sinking
at
into
the,
it.
at the
Okay.
end there, and only because we were filming in we call it the wave tank, this big water tank at the University of British Columbia, and they have to put a lot of chlorine into it and debris and everything to make the water look like lake water. And so Ronnie wanted me to sink into the water and keep my eye open. And so all this stuff is getting in my eye, and we're doing take after take, and it's just burning. And so that was the most, the hardest and most painful thing I did on it. Yeah, I remember that. That was difficult to do.
I always thought it was funny during that scene too, as you're sinking down, she throws the machete back into the water.
Yeah.
Like, here, we beat Freddy or whatever, but you're also a pretty much deaf machine yourself, but hey, thanks for the help. When you decide to come back out of the water, here's your machete.
Yeah.
Hey, bye. Like,
That was a custom-made machete.
yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Charlie.
No, you go.
That scene stands out, but the one truly for me as a kid was always the quarry scene with those tanks, because it was a matter of how is Freddy going to stand a chance, and of course with Freddy you always get the one-liner. So the classic, man, the torpedoes, and then he starts launching these things at you. I imagine, it's like wire work or whatever to kind of, once you get hit, you're like, shooting up a little bit.
Right.
Like, how was that scene?
I actually got hit by one of those tanks. They were on wires, and they were rubber and fake and everything. And it didn't hurt her, but they wanted them close enough by me. And I'm looking out of one eye, right? Because there's a prosthetic eye built into the mask. So I, only ever saw out of one eye. And so I was a little bit far to the right. I got hit by one of the tanks unexpectedly, but it wasn't a big deal. And then the other sequence was when he gets hit in the chest with it. Now that was Glenn again.
Okay.
So he was on a cable, and they did a ratchet, and he didn't land on that ratchet, but so it was I think a two-parter where it flew through the air and then hit the ground.
When you're doing kind of like the duty of stunt coordinator, setting stuff like that up, but you're also, I imagine, in costume to film. Like, with your experience as a stuntman, are you like always trying to like keep a closer eye at stuff like that as it's being like ready for production or ready for filming and all that? When you see a stunt that you're not even in, like, are you doing your own thing, or do you kind of see yourself almost like gravitating towards their behind the scenes just watching anyway?
If I understand your question, I once you're a stunt coordinator, I think you've got that experience and everything. You're always watching the set, and if you see something that's dangerous, you say something. And being used to be, I used to do a lot of shows where I would be the stunt coordinator, and then I'd throw myself a stunt, like in number 8. I was the stunt coordinator on that, and I sort of gave myself the greasy spoon diner guy job.
Yeah.
And so that's a good example of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's a simple stunt. Went in a couple parts. There's a scene where you see me approach Kane, and he grabs me, and I load up, and I jump out of frame.
Yeah.
That's as I'm leaving frame. That's a cut, and then I just stack some wooden boxes up in front of the bar, and did a running, and I stepped off that and flew into the mirror, And so that's another cut of that sequence.
Right.
And so I've thought about all that stuff ahead of time. You know, I've got my stunts all planned out and everything. So being in costume, it wasn't a big distraction for me or anything like that. And that was something I was used to doing.
Right on.
Yeah.
What was working with Robert Englund like, and how did you react the first time you saw him in the full Freddy makeup?
Well, actually, the first time I met Robert, I walked into the trailer and I introduced myself. I go, "Hi, hey, Robert, I'm Ken. I'm going to be playing Jason." And he was getting his makeup on at that moment, kind of thing. And he just turned to me and he goes, "Well, I'll be seeing you the rest of my life." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Conventions. I'll tell you all about it." And that was it. I mean, he was so welcoming and so great to work with, and I sort of dubbed him the Vincent Price of our time.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, 'cause I
I
think
can see
back to
that.
when I was a kid, and Vincent Price, he just reminds me so much of him.
Sure.
And where his career's taken him and stuff, and we got to go to Europe to promote the movie, and he just, between him and his wife Nancy, we just had a blast, and it's always great to see Robert and to have had that experience.
Did he realize that it was going to be the last time that he played Freddy Krueger? Did he?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. We really didn't discuss it much, but all the lawsuits and stuff like that have slowed things up, and then they
Yeah.
recast Freddy, which was a big mistake. Not that it had anything to do with the actor's talent or ability. It was just Robert had made that character his own, and I think it was just really hard to replace him.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of answered the last question that we're going to have time for before we take it to you guys for Q&A. But my question was, we were talking about before you came in, talking about the Freddy versus Jason versus Ash comic book that came out a few years ago. The rumors have always been that it's going to be made, or even so far as it's in production, and then of course they get shot down almost immediately. Like, no, it's not. No, nothing is known. But have you ever heard anything above a rumor like, hey, we're in serious talks to actually do this?
Well, I mean, when Freddy vs. Jason first came out, it was Jeff Katz, who was one of the producers who had I think pushed to get Freddy vs. Jason made. When we were doing the thing in Vegas, the promotion in Vegas, it was just so well received. He came to Robert and I right then and there, and he goes, "Hey, we want to do Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash, and we want to keep the band together. And Ken, we want you to play Jason, and Robert, we want you back." And he was talking about bringing Ronny Yu back, and so we were stoked. We thought, "No, this is right around the corner," And then as time went on, we heard, Sam Raimi didn't want to put Ash in there, and then we heard, all right, people are going to hate you, but who played Ash? Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
He said something like, "I'd never do a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash," and so if he's not willing to do it, well, you're not going to have Freddy versus Jason versus Ash.
That's true.
Yeah. Who here has a question for? Yes, go ahead.
Could you talk about playing the werewolf in Bad Moon, working with the dog, and why the costume was so difficult?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I did a werewolf movie called Bad Moon.
I love it.
And Michael Pare played the brother of Mariel Hemingway, who gets bitten by a werewolf and comes to hide with the family, and the family's got this dog. It was a German Shepherd, and so I was Michael Pare as the werewolf. And the werewolf costume was, it was complete body mold, and they actually made it smaller than my size so that it would fit tightly, and it had to be covered with a really thick rubber so that when I fought the dogs, they wouldn't tear the suit and stuff. And so it was, and they cast the costume as me kind of hunched over a bit, So all day long, this costume was pulling you into a hunched over position, and it was really thick. It didn't breathe. I could drink water and Gatorade all day, and I never had to take a leak because you just sweat it out. And you look through a hole about this big, and there's a piece of black mesh over it, and the head was animatronic, and so you got a battery pack, and I can only see when the mouth is open, and the mouth drooled and everything. I think I went out, apparently it's one of the top 5 werewolves in werewolf movies. You know, people really liked it, but the costume was just brutal to wear, and so when I fought the dogs, it looked so wolf-like. There was 3 dogs, 3 real attack dogs, and 2 were male and 1 was female. And the female was actually the smaller of the 3, and the first 2 wouldn't come at me.
Wow.
They were too afraid of the wolf and my size and stuff like that. But the third, the female, she would come hard. And so I'm fighting with her, and of course, I don't want to hurt the dog, and so I'm half-heartedly swatting it, but I can only see her half the time. I'm worried to get bitten in the wrong place. And she's, latching onto my arms and stuff like that, so it was difficult again because we were like, looking around. But yeah, that was a tough and interesting sequence to film.
Steve Johnson too. There were stories about him doing the mold of you and all that. The famous Oscar.
Well, I had to fly from Vancouver to LA, I think 3 times for them to do everything, get everything done that they need to do to make that werewolf costume. And we only had the one. And of course, by the end of it, you've sweated out and the inside's like rotting from the moisture, and they got to dry it out as best they can, but it's foam, so it soaks up all the moisture. So when you're getting into it, they got to cover me with baby powder. Otherwise, it's too hard to get. You can barely get it on, and the baby powder sort of absorbs some of the moisture, and then you can finally get it on. But when you first put it on, it's cold, and it's just. You wouldn't want to do it. I remember the last day of filming. We had shot all night, and I lived near the beach, and I was just so happy to be done with it. I was hungry. I stopped at McDonald's. I got some food, and I drove down to the beach, and I'm sitting there, and the sun's out. I'm feeling the sun. I'm going, thank God that's over. And I was having something to eat. But yeah, that was the. I've done a lot of suit stuff. I've been Sasquatch, robots, zombies. I played an angel football player once with wings, and but that was the worst.
That's the worst one. That was the most difficult for you?
Oh, by far, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Yeah.
In Freddy versus Jason, if I recall correctly, Freddy gouges out Jason's eyes. Was there any discussion on how he sees, if the eyes just regenerate, or what's?
If you go back through the history of Jason's injuries and stuff like that, he's got the axe in the head. He's had his hand split in half. He's had all these things done to him, and it's just like, don't ask questions.
Yeah.
So with the recasting, you mentioned how Freddy got recast for like a kind of remake. Do you feel kind of fortunate that you were casting Jason kind of ahead of the whole wave of social media into witnessing that backlash or that kind of like, I don't want to say toxicity, but toxicity that we see a lot today? And do you also think that it's kind of also opened you up to a platform that allows you to kind of talk to fans and communicate? And thirdly, sorry, it's a loaded question. Is there anything planned for the 20th anniversary?
I haven't heard about anything being planned for the 20th anniversary, but I hope somebody does something. It would be great to get as much as the cast together in one place. There's just so many people that love the movie, and it constantly just blows me away that I've got kids, like 8 years old and up to 78 years old, and it's just multi-generational. And it's something that I think a lot of people would love to celebrate and stuff. And I'm sorry, what was the other question you asked?
Do you feel kind of fortunate that you got ahead of the recasting without social media kind of clogging the channel?
Well, I mean, you know what? I've never been on any kind of social media. Somehow I got into LinkedIn completely accidentally or whatever. But there was certainly a lot of talk on websites and stuff like that.